Lorcan Xavier woke to the sound of wood striking wood in a rhythm he had not taught his sons. And when he stepped into the cold morning air with his sword half drawn, he saw a green-skinned orc girl with braided black hair demonstrating a defensive stance to his two boys while they held practice weapons he had carved for them months ago. She froze the moment she saw him, her amber eyes going wide with fear, and before he could demand an explanation, she blurted out, "They asked me to." His heart hammered against his ribs as he took in the scene more carefully. Owen, his eldest at 11 years, stood with his wooden sword raised in a guard position that was better than anything Lorcan had managed to teach him. Derry, only 8, held his smaller practice blade with confidence instead of the awkward grip he usually displayed. The orc girl herself could not have been more than 19 or 20, wearing leather wraps that had seen better days and carrying no visible weapons except for a hunting knife at her belt. Her tusks were small, barely protruding past her lower lip, and dirt streaked her arms and legs as though she had been traveling rough for some time. "Papa, please do not be angry," Owen said quickly, stepping between Lorcan and the orc girl. "We found her 3 days ago in the woods. She was hurt and hungry, and we brought her food from the larder. She has been sleeping in the old barn, and we did not tell you because we thought you would send her away." Lorcan's grip on his sword loosened, but he did not sheathe it. 3 days. His sons had been harboring an orc on his property for 3 days without his knowledge, sneaking food to her, and now learning combat techniques from her. He should have been furious. He should have been terrified for their safety. Instead, he found himself studying the orc girl's face, seeing the exhaustion etched into her features, the healing bruises along her jaw, and the way she held herself with resignation rather than aggression. "What is your name?" he asked, his voice coming out rougher than he intended. She straightened slightly, lifting her chin with a dignity that surprised him. "Raza, I mean no harm to you or your sons. They found me injured from a fall, and they showed me kindness when they could have left me to die. I was teaching them to fight because they asked, and because it is all I have to offer in return for the food they brought me." Lorcan finally sheathed his sword, though his hand remained on the hilt. "You are a warrior, then?" "I was, until my clan cast me out for refusing to raid human settlements." Her words were simple, direct, without pleading or excuses. "I have been traveling south, trying to reach the disputed territories where orcs and humans sometimes trade. I did not intend to stay here. I will leave now if you command it." Owen made a small sound of protest, and Derry moved closer to his older brother, both boys watching Lorcan with anxious expressions. He thought of his wife, dead these past 2 years from fever, and how hard it had been to raise 2 sons alone while managing the farm. He thought of the raids that had come through this region when he was younger, before the unsteady peace had been established, and the orc warriors he had fought in his days as a soldier. This girl, this Raza, did not look like those warriors. She looked lost and alone and trying desperately to maintain her pride in the face of rejection. "Come inside," he said finally. "If you have been sleeping in the barn for 3 days, you need a proper meal and a chance to clean yourself. Then we will talk about what happens next." Raza's eyes widened with surprise, and for a moment she seemed unable to speak. Owen grinned, and Derry let out a whoop of excitement before both boys rushed toward the house. Lorcan gestured for Raza to follow, and after a moment's hesitation, she did. The farmhouse was modest but well-maintained, with 2 bedrooms, a main room with a hearth, and a kitchen area where Lorcan prepared their meals. He set about making breakfast while Raza stood awkwardly near the door, clearly uncertain whether she should sit or remain standing. Owen and Derry had no such hesitation, chattering excitedly about the moves Raza had been teaching them and how much better they were getting at their footwork. "Sit," Lorcan said to Raza without looking up from the porridge he was stirring. "You are not a prisoner here." She sat at the table slowly, as though expecting it to be a trick. When he placed a bowl of porridge in front of her along with bread and butter, she stared at it for a long moment before picking up the spoon. She ate with careful control, not wolfing down the food despite what must have been considerable hunger, and Lorcan found himself respecting that restraint. "Your sons are clever learners," Raza said after a few minutes. "Owen has good instincts for defense, and Derry is faster than he realizes. They have potential. I have been trying to teach them what I know from my army days, but I was never a master swordsman," Lorcan admitted. "I can handle myself in a fight, but teaching is different from doing." "You were a soldier." Raza looked at him with new interest. "Then you have seen orcs in battle." "I have." He met her eyes steadily. "I have killed orcs in battle, and I have seen good men die at orc hands. I will not pretend otherwise. I would not expect you to." She took another bite of porridge, her expression thoughtful. "My clan raided human farms because that is what we have always done. The elders teach that humans are weak and treacherous, that they will destroy us if we do not strike first. I believed that until I saw a human woman shield her child with her own body during a raid. She was wounded, bleeding, but she would not move from that child. One of my clan brothers would have killed them both, but I stopped him. That was when I knew I could not continue on that path." Owen and Derry had gone quiet, listening with wide eyes. Lorcan felt a complicated tangle of emotions in his chest, anger and grief for all the violence between their peoples, but also something that might have been hope. "What happened then?" Derry asked softly. "My clan brother reported me to the war chief. I was given a choice: prove my loyalty by killing the woman and child myself, or be exiled. I chose exile." Raza's voice did not waver. "I have been wandering for 2 months, avoiding orc territories and human settlements alike. Your sons are the first people who have shown me any kindness since I left." Lorcan pushed back from the table, moving to the window to stare out at his fields. The farm had been in his family for 3 generations, and he had worked hard to keep it going after his wife's death. He grew wheat and barley, kept chickens and goats, and managed to make enough to feed his sons and occasionally trade for other necessities. It was a simple life, but it was honest, and he had hoped to pass it on to his sons one day. Having an orc on his property, even one who claimed to want peace, was dangerous. If word got out, his neighbors might turn on him. The village council might force her to leave or worse. But when he turned back to look at Raza, he saw the same desperate determination in her eyes that he had felt when his wife died, and he had to figure out how to be both mother and father to his boys. "You can stay in the barn for now," he said. "I will bring you proper bedding and more food. In return, you can help with farm work and continue teaching my sons to fight if they wish to learn. But there will be rules. You do not go into the village. You stay out of sight if anyone comes to the farm. And if there is any trouble, any sign that your clan is looking for you or that you are putting my sons in danger, you leave immediately." "Understood." Raza stood, pressing her fist to her chest in what he recognized as an orc gesture of respect. "Understood. You have my word, Lorcan Xavier. I will bring no harm to your household." The next weeks fell into a new rhythm. Lorcan rose before dawn to work the fields, while Raza helped with the heavier tasks that had been difficult for him to manage alone. She was stronger than he expected, able to lift sacks of grain that would have required 2 men, and she worked with tireless efficiency. Owen and Derry spent their mornings doing their lessons in reading and numbers, then practiced combat forms with Raza in the afternoons, while Lorcan prepared meals and tended to the animals. He found himself watching Raza more than he intended to. She moved with a grace that seemed at odds with her muscular build, and when she demonstrated a fighting technique, there was beauty in the controlled violence of her motions. She was patient with his sons, correcting their stances without harsh criticism, praising their improvements with genuine warmth. In the evenings, she would retreat to the barn, and Lorcan would see lamplight through the cracks in the walls as she did whatever she did in her solitude. One night, about 3 weeks after she had arrived, Lorcan brought dinner to the barn instead of calling her to the house. He found her sitting on the pile of straw that served as her bed, carefully stitching up a tear in her leather wraps with a bone needle. "I thought you might be tired of coming to the house every meal," he said, setting down the plate of stew and bread. Raza set aside her sewing, surprise flickering across her face. "That is kind. Thank you." He sat on an overturned bucket, watching as she ate. The barn smelled of hay and animals, familiar scents that reminded him of childhood. "You are good with Owen and Derry. They talk about you constantly. They are good boys. You have raised them well despite your loss." She paused, then added, "They told me about their mother. I am sorry." It was fever, nothing anyone could have done. The old pain still ached, but it had dulled with time. "I thought I would lose my mind those first months trying to keep everything together, but you do what you must for your children." "Yes." Raza's voice was soft. "You do." They sat in companionable silence for a while. Outside, crickets sang, and somewhere in the distance, an owl hooted. Lorcan found himself wanting to prolong the moment, to keep sitting here in this quiet space with this strange, fierce woman who had appeared in his life so unexpectedly. "Why did you really bring me food?" Raza asked. "You could have just called from the house." He considered lying, then decided against it. "Because I wanted to talk to you, away from the boys without the constant watching." "And what did you want to talk about?" "I am not sure yet." He smiled wryly. "Maybe I just wanted to see if you were real. Some mornings I wake up and think I dreamed the whole thing, that there is not actually an orc girl living in my barn and teaching my sons to be warriors." Raza laughed, a sound he had not heard from her before. It was surprisingly musical, with none of the harsh edge he associated with orc voices. "I am real, and I am grateful for what you have done for me, even if you are not sure why you did it. I did it because my sons saw someone in need and chose compassion over fear. I could not punish them for that, and I could not send you away after seeing that you meant no harm." He met her eyes. "But I will admit, I did not expect to enjoy having you here as much as I do." She went very still, her amber eyes searching his face. "What do you mean?" "I mean the farm runs more smoothly with another pair of hands. I mean my sons are happier than they have been since their mother died. I mean—" He trailed off, not sure how to finish the sentence without revealing too much. "You mean you are less lonely," Raza finished quietly. "Yes, that too." She set aside her plate, her expression turning serious. "Lorcan, you know I cannot stay forever. Even if you are willing to harbor me, eventually someone will find out, and when they do, there will be consequences for you and your sons." "I know." He stood, suddenly needing to move. "But I am not ready to think about that yet. For now, you are here and we are managing, and that is enough." Raza rose as well, stepping closer to him. She was tall for a woman, only a few inches shorter than his own height, and her presence filled the small space of the barn. "You are a strange man, Lorcan Xavier. Most humans would have killed me on sight or driven me away with violence. But you welcomed me into your home, fed me, gave me purpose." Why? He thought about all the easy answers he could give about Christian charity or pragmatic need for labor. But standing here in the dim lamplight with Raza's eyes on his, he found himself saying the truth. "Because when I look at you, I do not see a monster or an enemy. I see someone who made a hard choice to stand by her principles, even when it cost her everything. That is the kind of person I want my sons to learn from." For a long moment, neither of them moved. Then Raza reached out slowly, as though afraid he might pull away, and placed her hand on his arm. Her palm was warm and calloused from work, and Lorcan felt a jolt run through him at the contact. "Thank you," she whispered, "for seeing me as a person." He covered her hand with his own, unable to speak past the sudden tightness in his throat. Then he stepped back, breaking the contact, because if he did not leave now, he might do something foolish like pull her close and see if her lips were as soft as they looked. "Good night, Raza," he managed. "Good night, Lorcan." He walked back to the house in a daze, his mind churning with thoughts he had no business thinking. He was a human man, a farmer and a father, and she was an orc woman, an exile from her people. There could be nothing between them except the practical arrangement they had made. To think otherwise was madness. But as he lay in bed that night, staring at the ceiling, he could not stop thinking about the warmth of her hand or the way her eyes had softened when she thanked him. Summer deepened into its full heat, and the farm work became more demanding. Lorcan and Raza worked side by side in the fields, harvesting the early crops and preparing the ground for the next planting. She learned quickly, adapting to the rhythms of farm life with the same focused determination she brought to teaching his sons. Owen and Derry were improving noticeably, their movements more confident, their strikes more precise. Lorcan watched them practice one afternoon and felt a complicated mixture of pride and concern. They were growing up, his boys, becoming young men who would need to know how to protect themselves in a world that was not always kind. "You are worried," Raza said, coming to stand beside him. She smelled of sun and earth and something else, something uniquely her that made his pulse quicken. "I am always worried. That is what fathers do. They are strong. They will be able to defend themselves and others when the time comes." She paused, then added, "You are right to let them learn, even if the teacher is an orc." "You are not just an orc," Lorcan said before he could stop himself. "You are Raza. That matters." She turned to look at him, surprise and something else, something warm flickering across her face. "It matters to you, perhaps. The rest of the world would only see green skin and tusks. Then the rest of the world is blind." Raza opened her mouth to reply, but before she could speak, the sound of hoofbeats on the road made them both tense. Lorcan put a hand on her arm, silently urging her to stay calm, then called out to his sons, "Owen, Derry, inside the house. Now." The boys recognized the tone of command and obeyed immediately. Raza started toward the barn, but Lorcan shook his head. "No time. Behind the woodshed, out of sight. Stay there until I call for you or until whoever this is leaves." She hesitated for only a moment before nodding and slipping away. Lorcan walked toward the road, positioning himself to block any view of the barn or the woodshed. A moment later, 3 riders came into view. His neighbor Marcus from the next farm over, and 2 men Lorcan did not recognize wearing the leather armor of the village militia. "Lorcan," Marcus called out as he reined in his horse, "we need to talk." "About what?" Lorcan kept his voice casual, though his heart hammered in his chest. One of the militiamen spoke up, his voice hard. "There have been reports of an orc in the area, a young female traveling alone." "Have you seen anything unusual?" Lorcan forced himself to meet the man's eyes steadily. "I have seen nothing. Why would an orc be traveling alone through settled farmland?" "She is an exile from the Red Ridge clan," the other militiaman said. "They put out word that she betrayed them, helped humans during a raid. The clan wants her dead, and the village council has agreed that if she is found in our territory, she is to be captured and turned over to the orcs as a gesture of good faith." Ice flooded through Lorcan's veins. turned over to her own clan to be executed. That seems harsh. If she helped humans, why should we repay that with death? Marcus shifted uncomfortably in his saddle. The council is worried about provoking the Red Ridge clan. There has been peace for 5 years, and no one wants to risk starting the raids again over one orc exile. So we sacrifice someone who showed mercy to maintain peace built on fear, Lorcan said flatly. That is the world we want to live in. The first militiaman's eyes narrowed. You sound awfully sympathetic to an orc, Xavier. Makes a man wonder if maybe you have seen something after all. I sound sympathetic to basic decency, Lorcan shot back. But no, I have not seen any orcs on my property. Is there anything else? The militiamen exchanged glances, clearly not satisfied but unable to press further without evidence. Marcus gave Lorcan an apologetic look. If you do see anything, you are supposed to report it immediately, for your own safety as much as anything. Noted. Now, if you will excuse me, I have work to do. The 3 riders turned and headed back down the road. Lorcan waited until they were out of sight before allowing himself to breathe. Then he strode to the woodshed and found Raza crouched in the narrow space between the shed and the fence, her face pale beneath her green skin. "You heard?" he asked. "I heard." Her voice was steady, but he could see the fear in her eyes. "I should leave, tonight. If they are searching for me, I cannot stay here any longer. I will bring death to your door if I remain. Where will you go? If your clan is looking for you and the village militia is searching for you, you will not make it a day on the roads. Then I will die trying. Better that than bring ruin to you and your sons." She moved past him, heading toward the barn. "I will gather my things and leave as soon as it is dark." Lorcan followed her, his mind racing. Everything logical said he should let her go, should be relieved that she was removing herself before the situation became more dangerous. But the thought of her out there alone, hunted by her own people and by humans who would hand her over to be killed, made something fierce and protective rise up in his chest. "No," he said. Raza stopped, turning to face him. "No, you are not leaving. Not like this, not to be hunted down and killed. Lorcan, you do not understand. If they find me here, the council will punish you. They might take your farm or worse. Your sons could be taken from you. I will not allow that to happen because you showed me kindness." He stepped closer, close enough to see the flecks of gold in her amber eyes. "Then we will have to make sure they do not find you. The militia will search the area, but they will not search every farm thoroughly. We can hide you better, maybe in the root cellar or the attic. And if it comes to it, I will swear I knew nothing. You would lie for me." Disbelief colored her voice. "I would do more than lie." He reached out, cupping her face with one hand, feeling the smooth warmth of her skin against his palm. "Raza, these past weeks you have become part of this household. My sons adore you. The farm runs better with you here, and I—" He swallowed hard. "I do not want you to go, Lorcan." His name was a whisper on her lips. "What are you saying?" "I am saying that somewhere between finding you, teaching my sons to fight, and working beside you in the fields, I started to care about you. More than I should, probably more than is wise, but I cannot help it. The thought of you out there alone, in danger, makes me want to tear the world apart." Her free hand came up to cover his where it rested against her cheek. "You should not care for me. I am an orc. Your people hate my people, and mine hate yours. There is no future in this. Maybe not. But right now, in this moment, all I know is that I care what happens to you. So please, let me help. Let me keep you safe." For a long moment they stood frozen in that tableau, his hand on her face, hers covering it, the world narrowed down to just the two of them. Then Raza made a small, broken sound and leaned her forehead against his. "I care for you too," she whispered. "I have tried not to, Tried to keep my distance, but working beside you, watching you with your sons, seeing the man you are, I could not help but care. And it terrifies me, because I do not know how this can possibly end well for either of us." Lorcan tilted her chin up with his fingers, looking into her eyes. "Then we will take it one day at a time. We will be careful and we will be smart and we will protect what we have built here. Together." "Together," she echoed. And then somehow they were kissing, her tusks pressing gently against his face, her lips softer than he had imagined, her hands fisting in his shirt as though she could hold onto this moment forever. He kissed her with all the longing he had been suppressing for weeks, tasting salt and sweetness and something wild that made his heart race. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Raza laughed shakily. "Your sons are going to figure this out very quickly." "My sons have probably already figured it out. Owen told me last week that you make me smile more than I have in years." "Smart boy," she sobered. "But we still have the problem of the militia search. They will not give up easily. Then we will prepare." Lorcan took her hand, lacing his fingers with hers. "Come. We need to make a proper hiding place, somewhere you can go if they come back for a more thorough search." They spent the rest of the afternoon preparing the root cellar, moving crates and sacks to create a hidden space in the back where Raza could conceal herself if necessary. Owen and Derry helped, their young faces serious as they understood the gravity of the situation. When Lorcan explained that Raza might be in danger from people looking for her, both boys immediately declared that they would protect her, which made her eyes shine with unshed tears. "You are braver than most warriors I have known," she told them. "But I need you to be smart more than brave right now. If the militia comes back, you must act normal. Do not lie unless you have to, but do not volunteer information either. Can you do that?" They nodded solemnly, and Lorcan felt his heart swell with pride and fear in equal measure. His sons were too young to be caught up in this kind of danger, but they were also learning what it meant to stand by someone you cared about, even when it was hard. That night, Lorcan could not sleep. He lay in bed listening to every sound, jumping at every creak and rustle, half expecting to hear horses on the road or voices calling for the orc exile. Around midnight, he gave up and went outside, walking to the barn where lamplight still glowed. Raza was awake too, sitting on her straw bed with her knife in her hands, carefully sharpening the blade with a whetstone. She looked up when he entered and something in her expression softened. "Cannot sleep either?" she asked. "Too much to think about?" He sat beside her, not quite touching but close enough to feel her warmth. "I keep going over every possible scenario, trying to plan for what might happen. That is the problem with caring about people. It opens you up to fear." She set aside the knife and whetstone. "I have spent most of my life trying not to care too much. It is easier in an orc clan, where strength is valued above compassion. But then, I met a human woman willing to die for her child, and I could not maintain that distance anymore. And now I have met you and your sons, and I find myself terrified of losing what we have found together." Lorcan reached for her hand, holding it between both of his. "When my wife died, I thought I would never feel anything again. I went through the motions, took care of my boys, worked the farm, but it was like living in a fog. You brought color back into my world, Raza. Whatever happens, I will not regret that." She turned her hand in his grip, threading their fingers together. "If this goes wrong, if the militia finds me or if my clan tracks me here, I want you to know that these weeks with you have been the happiest of my life. I have never felt more myself, more valued for who I am rather than what I can do in battle. You gave me that." "We gave it to each other," he corrected gently. Then, because the night felt fragile and precious, he added, "Stay with me tonight. Not here in the barn, but in the house, in my room. I want to fall asleep beside you and wake up with you next to me, even if it is only for one night." Raza's eyes widened. "Lorcan, if your sons see my sons are asleep, and even if they were not, they already know I care for you. Please, Raza, let me hold you while we still can." She studied his face for a long moment, then nodded slowly. They walked to the house together through the moonlit yard, slipping inside as quietly as possible. Lorcan's bedroom was small and simple, with a bed large enough for two and little else. They lay down together fully clothed, Lorcan on his back with Raza curled against his side, her head on his chest. He wrapped his arms around her, breathing in the scent of her hair, feeling the steady thump of her heart against his ribs. "This is dangerous," she murmured. "Not just because of the militia, but because I could get used to this. I could start to believe we might have a future." "Would that be so terrible?" He stroked her hair, marveling at its silky texture. "To believe in possibility." "It would be terrible when reality crashes back in and tears us apart. Then we will make sure that does not happen." He kissed the top of her head. "Sleep, Raza, I will keep watch. You need sleep too. I will sleep when I know you are safe." She tilted her head back to look at him, and in the dimness he could see the emotion shining in her eyes. "I love you, Lorcan Xavier. I know I should not, I know it complicates everything, but I do. I love you," his breath caught. "I love you too. God help me, I love you." They kissed then, slow and deep, a promise and a prayer wrapped into one. When they finally settled back into the embrace, Raza's breathing gradually evened out into sleep. Lorcan stayed awake as he had promised, one hand stroking her hair, the other resting protectively on her hip, and made silent vows to whatever gods might be listening that he would keep this woman safe, no matter what it cost him. The next 2 weeks were tense. The militia searched several farms in the area, though they never came back to Lorcan's property. Word spread through the region about the orc exile, with some people calling for her blood and others questioning whether hunting her was truly the right thing to do. Lorcan kept his head down, worked his farm, and kept Raza as hidden as possible. She only practiced with Owen and Derry in the early mornings or late evenings when no one was likely to pass by on the road, but the constant vigilance was wearing on all of them. Raza grew quieter, more withdrawn, and Lorcan could see the guilt eating at her. She blamed herself for putting his family in danger, no matter how many times he assured her that he had made his choice willingly. His sons sensed the tension too, becoming more subdued, less likely to laugh and play as they had before. Things came to a head on a hot afternoon in late summer. Lorcan was in the field checking the wheat when Owen came running, his face pale with fear. "Papa, there are orcs on the road." A war party, maybe 6 or 7 of them. They stopped at the house and demanded to know if we had seen Raza. Terror flooded through him. "Where are Derry and Raza now?" "Derry is hiding in the house like you told us to do if there was trouble. Raza is in the root cellar." "But Papa, they are searching the barn." "If they decide to search the house too," Lorcan was already running, his heart pounding. He reached the farmyard to find 6 orc warriors, all male and heavily armed, standing near his barn. The leader, a massive orc with scarred arms and cold eyes, turned to face him. "Human, we seek a traitor from our clan, a young female named Raza. Have you seen her?" Every instinct screamed at Lorcan to lie, to send them away with false information. But he looked at these warriors, saw the barely contained violence in their stances, and knew that if they discovered his deception, they would kill everyone on this farm without hesitation. "Why would I tell you if I had?" he asked instead, putting every ounce of authority he had learned in his soldier days into his voice. "You come onto my land uninvited, make demands, threaten my family. Give me one reason I should help you." The orc leader's eyes narrowed. You speak boldly for a human alone against 6 warriors. We could tear this farm apart and kill everyone here. Tell us what you know, and we will leave peacefully. And if I do not know anything, you will tear my farm apart anyway looking for her. Lorcan crossed his arms. Here is what I know. You are looking for a woman who committed the crime of showing mercy. You want to execute her for refusing to kill innocents. That tells me everything I need to know about your clan and your honor. One of the other orcs growled and reached for his weapon, but the leader held up a hand. You know more than you should, human. That means you have seen her or spoken to her. Where is she? I will never tell you. Lorcan's voice was steady despite the fear racing through him. Do what you will to me, but I will not hand over someone who chose compassion over cruelty. The leader studied him for a long moment, and Lorcan could see the calculation in his eyes. Then, to his surprise, the orc smiled, showing his tusks. You care for her, a human man protecting an orc woman. How interesting. My feelings are none of your concern. They are when they involve clan business. The leader took a step forward. Here is what will happen, human. You will tell me where Raza is hiding, or I will order my warriors to start with your barn, then your house, then your sons. We will tear this place apart piece by piece until we find her. And when we do, we will kill everyone here and burn your farm to the ground as a message to others who might think to harbor traitors. No. The single word came from behind them, and Lorcan's heart stopped. Raza walked out of the house, her head high, her hands open and empty at her sides. I am here, Thrag. Let the humans be. Your quarrel is with me. Raza, no. Lorcan started toward her, but 2 of the orc warriors blocked his path. Stay back, Lorcan. Raza's voice was calm, almost serene. This is not your fight. The hell it is not. He struggled against the warriors holding him. Let her go. She has done nothing wrong. Thrag ignored him, focusing on Raza. So the rumors were true. The mighty Raza, who once led raids with such ferocity, has become a human's pet. How far you have fallen. I have not fallen, I have risen. Raza moved closer, putting herself between the orc war party and the house where Derry was hidden. I chose a different path, one based on honor rather than cruelty. If that makes me a traitor in your eyes, so be it. You broke clan law. You helped our enemies. The penalty is death. Thrag drew his blade, a wicked curved sword that gleamed in the sunlight. I will make it quick, for the sake of what you once were to us. Wait. Lorcan's voice cracked with desperation. You want her dead because she showed mercy to humans. But what if there was another way? What if she could prove that mercy is not weakness, that there can be strength in choosing peace? Thrag paused, curiosity flickering across his face. What are you suggesting, human? Trial by combat. Your clan's old ways, the traditions that predate the raids. Let Raza fight a champion, and if she wins, you acknowledge that her choice was valid and leave her in peace. Papa, no. Owen's voice came from near the house. They will kill her. But Raza was looking at Lorcan with something like wonder in her eyes. You would invoke the old laws for me. I would invoke anything that keeps you alive. He held her gaze, pouring everything he felt into that look. Fight, Raza. Show them who you are. Thrag considered for a moment, then nodded slowly. Very well. I will agree to trial by combat, but on one condition. If Raza loses, you and your sons die as well, as punishment for harboring a traitor. Do you accept these terms? Terror warred with determination in Lorcan's chest, but he did not hesitate. I accept. Lorcan, you cannot, Raza started, but he cut her off. I can and I will. Fight, Raza, for yourself, for me, for my sons. Show them what real strength looks like. Thrag gestured to one of his warriors, a lean orc with quick eyes. Kresh will be my champion. The fight ends when one party yields or dies. Are you ready, traitor? Raza looked at Lorcan one more time, and he saw love and fear and fierce determination in her eyes. Then she turned to face Kresh, falling into a fighting stance that he recognized from the hours he had watched her train his sons. "I am ready." The fight began with a rush of movement. Kresh was fast, his blade a blur as he attacked with the practiced efficiency of a veteran warrior. But Raza was faster. She dodged and parried, using her smaller size to her advantage, staying just out of reach of his most powerful strikes. Lorcan watched with his heart in his throat, every muscle in his body tense as though he could will his strength into her. Owen and Derry had emerged from the house despite his orders, standing beside him with wide, frightened eyes. He put a hand on each of their shoulders, as much to steady himself as to comfort them. "She is going to win, right, Papa?" Derry whispered. "She has to," Owen answered before Lorcan could speak. "She has to." The fight went on, both combatants breathing hard now. Kresh had superior reach and strength, but Raza had better technique and was reading his movements with the skill of someone who had fought beside these warriors for years. She knew their patterns, their preferred attacks, and she used that knowledge ruthlessly. Then Kresh made a mistake, overextending on a lunge. Raza sidestepped, brought her arm up in a strike Lorcan had seen her teach Owen a dozen times, and sent Kresh's weapon flying. Before he could recover, she had him on the ground with her knife at his throat. "Yield," she said, her voice carrying clearly across the farmyard. "Yield, and I will let you live." For a moment, Lorcan thought Kresh would refuse, would choose death over the dishonor of surrender. But then the orc warrior tapped his hand against the ground twice, the traditional gesture of submission. Raza stepped back immediately, offering her hand to help him up. After a moment's hesitation, Kresh took it. Thrag watched this exchange with an unreadable expression. Then he sheathed his own blade and approached Raza. "You have won the trial. By the old laws, your choice is validated and you are released from clan justice." "And Lorcan and his sons," Raza demanded. "They are free of your threat as well. They are." Thrag looked at Lorcan with something that might have been respect. "You are either very brave or very foolish, human, to stake your life on an orc's fighting skills, but you chose well. Raza was one of our finest warriors before she betrayed us." "She did not betray you," Lorcan said flatly. "She found her honor. There is a difference," Thrag grunted, neither agreeing nor disagreeing. He gestured to his warriors and they began to gather their weapons and prepare to leave. But before he mounted his horse, he turned back to Raza one last time. "You cannot go home, Raza. The clan laws protect you from execution, but you are still exiled. If you return to our lands, there will be no second trial." "I understand." Raza stood tall, and though Lorcan could see the pain in her eyes at this final severing of her ties to her people, her voice was steady. "I have found a new home here if it will have me." Thrag's gaze moved to Lorcan. "You would truly take an orc as part of your household. Your human neighbors will not be kind about such an arrangement." "Let them talk," Lorcan said. "I have faced worse than gossip." The orc leader actually smiled at that, a genuine expression that transformed his scarred face. "Perhaps there is hope for your two peoples after all. Farewell, Raza. May your new path bring you peace." The war party rode away, disappearing down the road in a cloud of dust. The moment they were out of sight, Lorcan's knees nearly buckled with relief. Raza rushed to him and he caught her in his arms, holding her so tightly he thought he might break her. "You are insane," she said, her voice muffled against his chest. "Staking your life and your sons' lives on my ability to win a fight. What were you thinking?" "I was thinking that I could not stand by and watch them kill you. I was thinking that you deserved a chance to prove yourself. I was thinking that I love you and I would rather die with you than live without you." He pulled back enough to look into her face. Was I wrong? No, she laughed, the sound edged with tears. You were not wrong. You were perfect and terrifying and wonderful. Then she kissed him, hard and fierce, a kiss full of relief and joy and promise. Papa, are you going to marry her? Derry asked, his child's voice cutting through the moment with perfect innocence. Lorcan broke the kiss, looking down at his youngest son. Would you want me to? Both boys nodded enthusiastically. She is part of our family already, Owen said. It would just make it official. Well then. Lorcan turned back to Raza, still holding her in his arms. Raza, I know we have not known each other long. I know the world will not make it easy for us. But these past weeks with you have been the best of my life, and I cannot imagine going back to the way things were before. Will you marry me? Will you stay here with me and my sons and build a life together? Raza's eyes filled with tears, but she was smiling. Yes, yes, 1,000 times yes. I will marry you, Lorcan Xavier, and I will love your sons as my own, and I will work this farm beside you until my dying day. They kissed again, softer this time, a sealing of the promise they had made to each other. Owen and Derry cheered, then rushed forward to hug them both, and for a moment the four of them stood there in the farmyard, wrapped in each other's arms, a family forged from impossible circumstances and defiant love. The wedding took place 3 weeks later, not in the village church where gossip and prejudice would have made the ceremony impossible, but in the farmyard under an oak tree that had stood for generations. There was no priest, but Marcus from the neighboring farm agreed to stand as witness, along with his wife Clara. The couple had been shocked when Lorcan first told them about Raza, but after meeting her and seeing how happy Lorcan and his sons were, they had accepted the situation with surprising grace. I may not understand it, Marcus had said, but I can see that you love each other, and that is more than many marriages have. If you are willing to face the consequences, then I will support you. It was more than Lorcan had dared hope for, and he was grateful for the friendship. A few other neighbors had learned about Raza's presence, and had reacted with varying degrees of hostility or confusion, but none had moved to interfere directly. Lorcan suspected that the story of her trial by combat had spread and earned her a certain grudging respect, even among those who disapproved of a human-orc union. Raza wore a simple dress that Clara had helped her make, dyed a deep blue that brought out the green of her skin in striking contrast. Lorcan wore his best shirt and trousers, his hair neatly combed for once. Owen and Derry stood beside them, acting as attendants, their young faces solemn with the importance of the occasion. Do you, Lorcan Xavier, take this woman, Raza, to be your wife? Marcus asked, following the traditional words as best he could remember them. I do. Lorcan's voice was clear and strong. I take her as my wife to love and honor in plenty and in want, in sickness and in health, for as long as we both live. Marcus turned to Raza. And do you, Raza, take this man to be your husband? I do. She spoke the words in the human tongue, then repeated them in Orcish, her voice carrying the weight of an oath. I take him as my husband to love and protect, to stand beside through all trials, for as long as breath remains in my body. Then by the power vested in me by a common decency and the fact that no one else was willing to do this, Marcus said with a slight smile, I declare you husband and wife. You may kiss. They did, to the cheers of Owen and Derry and the polite applause of Marcus and Clara. It was not the grand wedding either of them might have once imagined, but it was real and true, and that was all that mattered. The celebration that followed was modest but joyful. Clara had brought a cake she had baked, and Lorcan had traded for a small cask of ale from the village. They ate and drank in the late afternoon sunshine, and for a few hours the weight of the world's judgment fell away, leaving only happiness and hope. That night, after Owen and Derry had been tucked into bed, Lorcan and Raza retired to their room as husband and wife. They undressed slowly, both suddenly shy despite everything they had been through together. When they finally came together, it was with tenderness and passion in equal measure, a physical expression of the love they had declared that day. Afterwards, Raza lay with her head on Lorcan's chest, his arms wrapped around her, listening to the steady beat of his heart. "Are you happy?" he asked softly. "Happier than I ever thought possible," she murmured. "I have a home, a family, a purpose, and the love of a man I admire more than anyone I have ever known. What more could I ask for? A world that accepted us without judgment," he suggested wryly. "That would be nice, but I will take what we have built here. This farm, these boys, you." "It is enough. It is everything." Lorcan kissed the top of her head. "I love you, Lorcan Xavier." She smiled at the name. "I love you too, my husband." They fell asleep tangled together, and if both of them kept some small part of themselves alert for the sound of trouble approaching, it was an understandable caution given all they had survived to reach this moment of peace. The seasons turned. Autumn came with its harvest, and Raza proved invaluable in helping to bring in the crops and prepare for winter. Owen and Derry continued their combat training, but now Raza taught them more than just fighting techniques. She shared stories of orc culture, teaching them to see her people as individuals rather than monsters. She taught them the orcish language, and in turn, she improved her own command of the human tongue, losing some of the formal stiffness that had marked her early speech. Winter settled over the farm, bringing snow and cold that kept them mostly indoors. It was during these long winter nights that Raza truly became part of the family, sitting by the fire with Owen and Derry, teaching them to carve wood in the orcish style or sharing legends from her people. Lorcan would watch these scenes with quiet contentment, marveling at how this fierce warrior had adapted to domestic life without losing any of her strength or dignity. But peace, as always, was fragile. The village council sent a representative in early winter, demanding to know if the rumors about an orc living on the Xavier farm were true. Lorcan met the man at his door, with Raza standing beside him, and confirmed that yes, she was there. And yes, they were married, and no, he had no intention of sending her away. The representative, a pompous man named Gerald who had always disapproved of Lorcan's independent streak, sputtered with outrage. "This is unacceptable. You cannot simply marry an orc and expect the community to condone it. There are laws, traditions. There are no laws against it," Lorcan interrupted calmly. "I checked. Unusual, yes. Unprecedented, perhaps, but not illegal. The council will not stand for this. We could force you to leave, declare your farm forfeit. On what grounds?" Lorcan's voice hardened. "I pay my taxes. I contribute to the village stores. I cause no trouble. You cannot punish me simply because my wife is a different species than I am." Gerald's face reddened. "She is a monster. Her people have raided our lands for generations. How can you expect us to accept her?" "She is a person," Lorcan said flatly. "She has a name, a history, a heart, and if you cannot see that, then the monster is not her but your own prejudice. This is not over, Xavier. The council will discuss this matter further." Gerald turned and stalked away, nearly slipping on the icy path in his anger. Raza put a hand on Lorcan's arm. "This will cause you trouble. Perhaps I should do not even suggest leaving," he said firmly. "We are married. You are my wife. Nothing the council says or does will change that." But the encounter left them both unsettled. Over the next weeks, it became clear that the village was divided on the issue. Some agreed with Gerald that an orc should not be allowed to live among them, while others argued that Raza had proven herself harmless and even helpful. The debate grew heated enough that it reached the ears of the regional governor, who sent his own representative to investigate. This representative, a woman named Lady Ashford, arrived in early spring as the snow was beginning to melt. Unlike Gerald, she approached the farm with curiosity rather than condemnation. Lorcan and Raza received her in their home, offering tea and treating her with courtesy. Lady Ashford spent an hour asking questions, listening carefully to both their stories. She spoke with Owen and Derry as well, asking how they felt about their father's orc wife. Both boys answered honestly that they loved Raza and could not imagine their family without her. Finally, Lady Ashford sat back in her chair and looked at Lorcan and Raza thoughtfully. "I will be honest with you both. This situation is unprecedented in our region. There are no laws to guide me, only customs and prejudices that may or may not be valid. But what I see here is a functional family, a productive farm, and two people who clearly love each other. I can find no legal reason to interfere." Relief flooded through Lorcan. "Thank you, my lady. However," Lady Ashford continued, "I must be practical. There will be people who refuse to accept this, who will cause trouble for you and your family. Some may refuse to trade with you or work with you. Others may be more directly hostile. Are you prepared for that?" "We are," Raza said quietly. "We have faced worse than social disapproval." "I believe you have." Lady Ashford stood. "Very well. I will report to the governor that there is no legal basis for action against you, and I will recommend that the village council accept your marriage as valid. But beyond that, you will have to manage the social consequences yourselves." After she left, Lorcan and Raza sat together in silence for a long time. Finally, Raza spoke. "She is right, you know, there will be consequences. Your life would be easier without me." "My life would be empty without you," Lorcan corrected. "Yes, some people will make things difficult. But we have friends like Marcus and Clara. We have each other. We have the boys. That is enough to face whatever comes." Raza leaned against him and he wrapped his arm around her shoulders. "I am not used to this," she admitted. "In orc culture, you fight for what you want and the strongest wins. But this quiet resistance, this standing firm against social pressure, it requires a different kind of strength." "Then we will be strong together," Lorcan said simply. As Lady Ashford had predicted, the months that followed brought both acceptance and rejection. Some neighbors stopped trading with Lorcan, forcing him to travel farther to sell his crops and buy supplies. But others, seeing that the sky did not fall because an orc lived among them, began to cautiously accept Raza's presence. She helped Clara with a difficult birth when the midwife was delayed, using orc healing techniques to stop bleeding that might have killed mother and child. She assisted in tracking down a wolf that had been preying on livestock, using her warrior skills to protect the community. Slowly, grudgingly, Raza earned a place in the area. She would never be fully accepted by everyone, but she gained a measure of respect that made daily life easier. Owen and Derry, now 13 and 10, had become accomplished fighters under her tutelage, and word spread that the Xavier boys could handle themselves in a scrap. No one bothered them about their orc stepmother when they could outfight most boys their age. It was in the late summer of their second year together that Raza came to Lorcan with news that changed everything. They were working in the garden, harvesting vegetables for the evening meal, when she suddenly straightened and placed a hand on her stomach. "I am with child," she said, her voice filled with wonder and fear. Lorcan nearly dropped the basket he was holding. "Are you certain?" "I am certain. Orc women know these things early. I carry your child, Lorcan, our child." He set down the basket and pulled her into his arms, his mind reeling. A child. A half-human, half-orc child. He had not even considered the possibility, had not thought about what such a child might mean or how the world might treat them. "Are you happy?" Raza asked hesitantly. "I know this complicates things." A child of mixed blood will face challenges we cannot even imagine. "I am terrified," Lorcan admitted. "But yes, I am happy. We will face those challenges together just like we have faced everything else." Raza's eyes shone with tears. "I did not think I could be a mother. In my clan, I was a warrior, nothing more. But with you, I am discovering parts of myself I never knew existed." "You will be an amazing mother," Lorcan said with absolute certainty. "You are patient and strong and kind. Our child will be lucky to have you." They told Owen and Derry that night, and both boys reacted with excitement rather than concern. Derry immediately began making plans for how he would teach his new sibling to climb trees, while Owen asked serious questions about what supplies they would need and how to prepare. Watching his sons embrace the idea of a half-orc sibling with such easy acceptance, Lorcan felt hope bloom in his chest. Maybe, just maybe, the next generation would do better than their parents at seeing past differences. The pregnancy progressed normally, though Raza assured him that orc pregnancies were shorter than human ones, and the child would likely arrive in 7 months rather than 9. Lorcan fussed over her constantly, earning both exasperation and amusement from his wife. She continued to work the farm and train the boys, though she modified the more strenuous activities as her belly grew. It was during her 6th month, when she was heavily pregnant and moving more slowly, that trouble came again. A group of young men from the village, emboldened by drink and egged on by Gerald's continued agitation against the Xavier family, decided to teach the orc lover a lesson. They came to the farm at night, carrying torches and clubs, shouting threats about burning out the monster and her human pets. But they had not counted on several things. First, that Lorcan had been a soldier and still knew how to fight. Second, that Raza, even pregnant, was still a formidable warrior. And third, that Owen and Derry had been trained by one of the finest fighters in the region and would protect their mother without hesitation. The confrontation was brief and decisive. Lorcan met them in the yard with his sword drawn, while Raza stood at his back with a spear she had fashioned from farm tools. Owen and Derry flanked them, armed with their practice weapons that were more than capable of doing damage. "You are trespassing," Lorcan said coldly. "Leave now, or face the consequences." The leader of the group, a young man named Tom who worked at the village smithy, laughed drunkenly. "You cannot fight all of us, Xavier. We will burn this place to the ground and drive that orc back where she came from." "You will try," Raza said, her voice carrying the weight of all her warrior training. "And you will fail. I have fought real battles against trained soldiers. You are children playing at violence." "She is right," a new voice said, and Marcus stepped out of the darkness, carrying a hunting bow with an arrow nocked. "And I am not the only one who thinks so." Clara appeared beside him with a stout stick, and to Lorcan's shock, several other neighbors emerged from the shadows, armed and clearly ready to defend the Xavier family. Tom looked around, his bravado faltering. "You would stand with an orc over your own kind." "I would stand with my neighbors over a bunch of drunk idiots trying to commit arson," Marcus said flatly. "Lorcan and Raza have done nothing wrong. They work hard, help when asked, and raise those boys right. If you have a problem with that, it is your problem, not theirs. Now get off this property before I put an arrow in something you will miss." The would-be attackers looked at each other, clearly not having expected organized resistance. After a tense moment, Tom spat on the ground and gestured to his friends. "This is not over." "Yes, it is," Clara said firmly. Because if you try this again, we will go to Lady Ashford and have you arrested for attempted arson and assault. Go home, Tom. Sleep off the drink and think about what kind of man you want to be." The group slunk away, their torches guttering in the night. Lorcan lowered his sword, his hands shaking with adrenaline. Raza leaned against him, her hand on her swollen belly, and he realized she was trembling too. "Thank you," he said to Marcus and the others who had come. "We would not have blamed you for staying away." "You are our neighbors," Marcus said simply. "That means something. Besides, Raza helped bring our daughter into the world when she might have died. We do not forget that kind of debt." The others nodded, offering words of support and assurance before gradually leaving. When it was just Lorcan's family again, standing in the farmyard under the stars, Raza began to cry. Lorcan held her carefully, mindful of her pregnancy, while Owen and Derry pressed close on either side. "I thought we would be alone," Raza whispered. "I thought when it came down to it, no humans would stand with us against their own kind." "They did not stand with us against their kind," Owen said with a wisdom beyond his years. "They stood with us against people who were wrong. That is different." "Your son is very smart," Raza said, managing a watery smile. "He gets it from his stepmother," Lorcan replied, kissing her forehead. The child came on a cold morning in early winter, arriving with the kind of speed that characterized orc births, and left Lorcan scrambling to boil water and gather supplies. Clara had come to help, having experience as a midwife, and between her calm guidance and Raza's own strength, the birth went smoothly. When Lorcan finally held his daughter in his arms, he felt his heart expand in ways he had not known possible. She was tiny and perfect, with skin that was a warm olive tone halfway between her mother's green and his own pale coloring. She had small buds where tusks might grow one day, pointed ears like Raza's, and a tuft of dark hair. When she opened her eyes, they were the same amber as her mother's. "She is beautiful," he breathed, looking at Raza, who lay exhausted but smiling in their bed. "She is ours," Raza replied. "What should we name her?" They had discussed names for months, trying to find something that would honor both human and orc traditions. Finally, Lorcan said, "What about Alara? It was my mother's name, and it sounds enough like the orcish Allura that it bridges both cultures." "Lorcan Xavier," Raza tested the name, then nodded. "It is perfect. Hello, little Alara. Welcome to our strange and wonderful family." Owen and Derry crowded in to see their sister, both boys immediately smitten with the tiny creature. Over the following days, as Raza recovered and Alara began to settle into the rhythms of newborn life, Lorcan watched his family with profound gratitude. They had been through so much, faced prejudice and violence and uncertainty, but they had survived and built something beautiful. Word of Alara's birth spread through the community, and reactions were mixed. Some people muttered darkly about the unnatural child, but others, moved by curiosity or compassion, brought gifts and offered congratulations. Lady Ashford herself sent a letter acknowledging the birth, and stating that Alara would be registered as a citizen with full rights under regional law, setting a precedent that Lorcan knew was both brave and politically risky. As winter deepened and then slowly gave way to spring, Alara grew from a tiny infant into a sturdy baby who could sit up and grasp at things with surprising strength. She was curious and bright, clearly taking after both parents in temperament. Owen and Derry doted on her, taking turns carrying her around the farm and showing her everything from the chickens to the fields. One evening in late spring, as Lorcan sat on the porch watching the sunset with Raza beside him and Alara drowsing in her mother's arms, he felt a sense of completion he had never expected to find again after his first wife's death. "You ever regret it?" he asked quietly. Leaving your clan, giving up your old life. Raza considered the question seriously, as she always did. I regret the pain it caused. I regret that I cannot share this happiness with the orc family I once had, but I do not regret the choice itself. That choice led me here to you, to Owen and Derry, to Alara. How could I regret finding love and purpose and belonging? We have been lucky, Lorcan said. Things could have gone so differently. We could have been killed by your clan or mine. Alara might not have been accepted. The village could have forced us out. But none of those things happened, Raza pointed out. We fought for what we wanted, and we found people willing to stand with us. That is not luck, Lorcan. That is the result of being brave enough to choose love over fear. He pulled her close, careful not to jostle the sleeping baby. I love you, Raza. I love the life we have built, the family we have created. Whatever comes next, we will face it together. Together, she agreed, and kissed him as the last rays of sunlight painted the sky in shades of gold and crimson. Years passed, and the Xavier family grew deeper roots in the community. Owen turned 18 and took over more of the farm work, showing a natural talent for agriculture. Derry, now 15, had developed an interest in smithing and was apprenticed part-time to the village blacksmith, having won over the man's initial reluctance with his skill and determination. Alara, at 6 years old, was a whirlwind of energy and curiosity, speaking both human and orcish languages fluently, and showing early signs of her mother's combat instincts. The farm prospered under the combined efforts of the whole family. Raza's strength and Lorcan's experience made them an effective team, and they had expanded their holdings slightly, purchasing an adjacent field that had been abandoned when its previous owner died. They had become, improbably, one of the more successful farms in the region. But more importantly, they had become a symbol. Other mixed relationships, tentatively, began to appear. A human woman married an orc merchant who traveled through the area. A group of orc refugees, fleeing violence in their homelands, were given sanctuary in the region partly because the Xavier family had proven that orcs and humans could coexist peacefully. The change was slow and often painful, with setbacks and tragedies along the way, but it was happening. On a warm summer evening, the family gathered for dinner in their expanded house. Owen brought his sweetheart Anne, a shy girl from a neighboring farm who did not care that his stepmother was an orc. Derry demonstrated his latest metalwork project, a beautiful knife he had forged with an orc-style blade. Alara chattered about wanting to learn to read better so she could study the old stories from both cultures. Lorcan looked around the table at his family, at the faces he loved more than anything in the world, and felt a contentment so deep it was almost overwhelming. This was what they had fought for, this simple domestic happiness. This was what made all the struggles worthwhile. After dinner, as the children scattered to their various activities, Lorcan and Raza walked out to their favorite spot, a small hill overlooking the farm where they could see the whole property spread out below them. The wheat rippled in the evening breeze, and the sound of Owen's laughter drifted up from the barn where he was showing Anne the new calf. "You remember the day we met?" Raza asked, leaning against Lorcan's shoulder. "When you caught me teaching Owen and Derry to fight, and I froze like a startled rabbit. I remember thinking you were going to bolt like a wild thing," Lorcan replied with a smile. "And then you said they asked me to, as though that explained everything. In a way, it did. They asked, and I wanted to give them something in return for their kindness. I never imagined it would lead to all of this." She gestured at the farm, the house, the life they had built. "I never imagined I could love again after losing my first wife. I never imagined I could fall in love with an orc warrior who appeared out of nowhere and changed everything." He turned to face her, taking both her hands in his. "But I did, and it has been the greatest adventure of my life." Raza smiled, the expression lighting up her face in the way that still made his heart skip. "We have done well, you and I. Against all odds and expectations, we have built something lasting." "We have built a family," Lorcan corrected, "and a legacy." Look at Owen with Anne, how easily he bridges the divide we had to fight so hard to cross. Look at Derry, learning orcish techniques from you and incorporating them into human metalwork. Look at Alara, who does not even see the boundaries we grew up with. We have not just built a life, Raza. We have helped build a better world. "A better world," she repeated softly. "I like that. It feels like something worth all the struggle." They stood together in the fading light. Two people who should never have met, let alone fallen in love, watching the sun set over the home they had created through courage and stubbornness and love. Behind them, they could hear their children, the beautiful proof that different peoples could not just coexist but thrive together. Lorcan thought back to that morning years ago when he had walked out to find an orc girl teaching his sons to fight, to the moment of frozen panic on her face, to her desperate explanation. She had changed his life with those words. "They asked me to," had set in motion a chain of events that transformed his world. He pulled her close, breathing in the familiar scent of her, feeling the solid warmth of her body against his. "I love you, Lorcan Xavier." From that first morning to this moment and every day yet to come, she wrapped her arms around him, strong and sure. "I love you too, Lorcan. You gave me a home when I had nothing, a family when I was alone, and a future when I thought I had lost everything. You are my heart." They kissed as the stars began to emerge overhead, and in that moment, everything was perfect. The farm would continue, their children would grow and have children of their own, and the world would keep changing, slowly becoming more accepting and more open. But here, now, there was only this. Two people who had chosen love over fear, who had fought for the right to be together, who had built something beautiful from the ashes of their separate pasts. And it was enough. It was everything.